The winter storm slammed into the forward operating base like a steel hammer wrapped in ice, flinging snow from a pale sky so thick it cut visibility down to barely 20 meters on a decent day. Wind howled through the mountain cuts, carrying a chill that felt like sharp blades on any exposed skin. Inside the temporary buildings scattered across the valley, heaters pushed their limits while soldiers bundled up in thermal gear and waited out their shifts. Near the ammo depot, tucked inside a prefab metal shed that rattled with each gust, Nora Reeves worked quietly. Small in stature, 5'4" at best, dark hair pulled back into a tight bun, eyes always distant like she was focused on something just out of reach. Her hands moved with calm precision over a CheyTac M200 sniper rifle spread across the bench, checking screws, adjusting the barrel, cleaning the bolt with a care that bordered on devotion. The door suddenly burst open as 3 Navy SEALs stumbled inside, shaking snow from their gear. "Hey, Reeves," Jack Rourke called, broad-shouldered with a Tennessee drawl. "That saw ready yet? Carter nearly wore the feed tray clean through." Nora didn't bother looking up. "Third shelf, left side. Cleaned and test-fired." Rourke shot a look at his buddies. "You test-fired it? At like 0400? In this mess?" The younger one with a Boston accent laughed. "Lady, you gotta be nuts or totally immune to cold." Nora kept working, voice even. "Weapons don't care if I'm comfortable. They need to function." The last SEAL, older than the others, quiet, lines around his eyes speaking to too many deployments. Sergeant Alvarez stepped closer, watching her hands. "That's a sniper system," he said low. "Why are you the one tuning it up? We're not slated for long-range ops." "Maintenance rotation," Nora answered plainly. "Every gun gets serviced. No exceptions." Rourke snorted. "You even know how to zero that thing?" "Yes." "Ever actually fire one for real?" Her hands paused for just a breath, barely noticeable. "I do my job," she said. "You should handle yours." The younger SEAL bristled, but Alvarez set a firm hand on his shoulder, guiding him back. "Let's go. Briefing in 10. Sergeant Alvarez paused in the doorway as the others stepped out, studying the small woman bent over one of the world's most advanced rifles. There was something in the way Nora Reeves handled it, not just the precise care of a technician, but the natural confidence of someone who had trusted a weapon like this to save her life. Outside, trudging toward the operations tent through knee-deep snow, Jack Rourke muttered, "Women are strange. Who signs up to be an armorer in a frozen hell like this?" Alvarez kept his thoughts to himself, but his mind was turning. He'd worked with enough real shooters to notice the subtle tells, the way Nora's fingers checked headspace and timing without even glancing. How she'd instinctively corrected the scope mount, as if she could see flaws others never would. That wasn't learned. That was pure instinct. Back inside, Nora finished the job and sealed the CheyTac in its case. Through the narrow window, jagged mountains loomed, peaks swallowed by a raging storm. Somewhere beyond them, soldiers were freezing and dying in places only fools entered unprepared. She'd walked away from that world 2 years ago. She had promised herself she was done with rifles forever. But mountains didn't honor promises, and winter had a cruel way of dragging your past to the surface. The door swung open again, and Commander Kane stepped in, powdered with fresh snow. A tall, broad man with sharp eyes and steel-gray hair, 15 years in the SEALs, with the last 3 leading this task force. "Reeves," he said in greeting, and she snapped to a restrained attention. His gaze drifted to the neatly secured weapon cases. "How's our inventory?" "Fully operational," Nora replied. 3 rifles will need new barrels within 100 rounds. Requisition submitted. Kane nodded. Alvarez tells me you're comfortable with a CheyTac. Sir, I'm comfortable with every weapon in this armory. That's the job. He studied her closely. 2 months here, and he'd never once seen her relax. No jokes, no sighs, not a single complaint about cold or boredom. Most troops had quirks. She had none. Just a perfectly sealed wall. Where'd you train? He asked casually. Multiple bases. It's in my file. I read your file, he said, voice sharpened with curiosity. Says logistics specialist. Then you shift to armorer. No mention of sniper school. Because I never attended sniper school, sir. A technically true answer, but too careful, too smooth. Kane knew the sound of buried truth. His instincts stirred, but he let it go. Keep up the solid work. When he stepped out, Nora finally breathed. Slow, shaky, like she'd been holding the air in her chest too long. She turned back to the bench, but her hands trembled. She curled them into fists until the shaking eased. Outside, the wind screamed harder, and the temperature plunged, night creeping in with teeth. Night dragged in with a kind of darkness that reminded men why cold was something to fear. By morning, the world was still frozen stiff under a sky the color of dull steel. The storm hadn't let up, it had worsened, dumping another 8 inches of snow across the base, crushing visibility to barely 15 meters. The temperature hovered near -20, and that wasn't even counting the wind chill that cut straight to the bone. Inside the operations center, Commander Kane stared at worsening forecasts with a clenched jaw. 2 patrols were still out there, extraction windows shrinking fast. But the base couldn't stop functioning. Guns needed work, supplies needed counting, and troops still needed training whether they liked it or not. Down in the ammunition bunker, Sergeant Alvarez found Nora Reeves scanning crates in the cramped space lined top to bottom with metal shelving and fluorescent lighting that made everything look harsh and cold. Got a question, he said, leaning casually in the doorway. That M1 from the last mission, the feed kept jamming. You fixed it in 20 minutes. How? Nora kept her eyes on the scanner. Gas block was fouled, cleaned it, regulator adjusted, buffer spring replaced. It isn't complicated. Funny, Alvarez replied. Carter spent 3 hours messing with it yesterday and didn't solve a thing. Carter lacks attention to detail, she said flatly. A ghost of a grin pulled at Alvarez's mouth. You know what I think? You've done that repair before. Under fire, I'm guessing. Maybe with a minute and a half before someone traced your position. Nora's hands froze in mid-movement. She lifted her gaze, locking eyes with him for the first time. What are you getting at, Sergeant? Just curious, he said, shrugging. Most armorers? They're smart about weapons, but you understand failure points, weaknesses, the things you only learn out there. I read the manuals, she replied, voice cool as ice. Alvarez pushed off the doorframe. You ever hear of a sniper called White Frost? Nora's face held steady, blank as ever. But Alvarez spotted the tiny flicker, the tightening in her eyes that came and went too fast to catch unless you were watching. No. Supposedly operated up in mountains like these about 4 years ago, during the Kandak offensive. Stories claim this shooter made hits nobody believed possible, then vanished after one mission. Image never confirmed. Sounds like some campfire legend, Nora said. Yeah, maybe. Alvarez turned to go, then paused in the doorway. Last time White Frost was seen, a mission went south fast. Mortars wiped out the team. Only one survivor. Records got sealed so tight no one ever found the name. He walked out, leaving the words to hang like frost in the air. Nora stood perfectly still for a moment, breathing shallow, eyes unfocused, lost somewhere far away in a place thick with smoke and snow and memory. Then she forced herself back into motion, scanning crates like she'd never stopped. Later that afternoon, the storm still raging, Jack Rourke decided the SEALs needed a distraction and set up an off-the-cuff shooting contest. Rifle shots cracked through the icy air as operators tested their aim against distant targets 400 meters away, the furthest they dared in this weather. Nora stood quietly off to the side, watching the men shoot, making mental notes about which guns were going to end up on her bench next because of sloppy handling. "Hey, Reeves!" Jack Rourke called out. "How about you take a shot? Let's see what the armorer can actually do." A few SEALs laughed. Harmless on the surface, but there was that subtle jab underneath, the assumption that she only ever belonged behind a bench. "I'm working," Nora replied, calm and quiet. "Come on, just one. Or scared you'll look bad?" Alvarez shot Rourke a glare, but the others were already pushing, turning casual teasing into a challenge, a test to see whether the silent armorer was hiding behind her tools. Nora glanced over the rifles, then the targets. 400 meters. Gusting wind. Snow whipping across the line. Basic work for a trained shooter. Nothing that risked revealing too much. "Fine," she said. "One shot." She lifted an M110, checked the chamber without thinking about it, and stepped to the firing line. No drama, no fancy setup. She simply stood there, rifle raised, body still as if the cold didn't even touch her. The wind kicked up, snow spinning in front of the target. Nora's breathing slowed, her entire frame settling into an eerie stillness that made Sergeant Alvarez focus sharply on her. She squeezed the trigger. A distant punch echoed back, and the target sprouted a clean hole just a touch left of center to counter the wind. "Lucky," someone muttered. Nora safed the rifle and handed it back to Rourke. "Weapon pulls .3 mils left at this distance. Fix your scope." Then she turned and walked away, leaving a circle of stunned operators watching her go. Alvarez couldn't help but smile. It wasn't the shot. Plenty of decent shooters could hit at 400. It was how she immediately diagnosed the rifle from a single round and moved on, not even slightly impressed with herself. That was learned through years of muscle memory under pressure, not casual training. Later that evening, Alvarez found Commander Kane in his small office, a converted shipping container overcrowded with maps and kept alive by a wheezing heater. "Sir, got a minute?" "What's up?" "Reeves," Alvarez said. "Something about her doesn't track." Kane leaned back, giving him the floor. Alvarez laid everything out. The way she tuned weapons like extensions of herself, the instinctive handling of the rifle, the stillness in the storm. "Sir, I've worked with real shooters. The elite ones. They think differently. Reeves has that. And that sniper name I told you about. White Frost? The guy I served with said he thought that shooter was a woman. Small. Dark hair. Never confirmed." Kane was silent for several seconds. "You're telling me our armorer is some ghost sniper from classified ops?" "I'm saying she's not who her file claims she is," Alvarez replied. "And considering the terrain and everything stirring out here, that could be important." After Alvarez left, Kane sat alone, listening to the wind slam the walls. He opened Nora's personnel file again, for the third time. It was neat. Too neat. No problems, no awards, nothing exceptional. Just a smooth record of reliable service. Too smooth. At the bottom, buried like something someone hoped no one would notice, was a single cryptic note. The note read, "Previous assignment records require Level 5 clearance. Commander Kane only held Level 4. Whatever Nora Reeves had done before arriving here, someone high above his pay grade wanted it buried deep." He stared at those words for a long moment before snapping the file shut. Outside, the storm kept growing, swallowing the night, the mountains guarding their secrets, as always. Then everything changed at 300 hours when an emergency transmission cut through the comms center like a blade made of ice. "Viper 6, this is Reaper 2. We are under effective fire, multiple casualties, immediate extraction requested." Kane burst into the ops center within 90 seconds, jacket half-zipped. Lieutenant Lauren Pike, the young radio operator, had the call on speaker, her face washed pale in monitor light. "Reaper 2, we need your position," Kane demanded. Static then. "Grid November 74582. We're pinned in a valley, east side. Hostiles have high ground on 3 sides. Tried to move, lost 2 men. We're dug in, but they're pushing hard. Estimate 15 to 20 fighters. Heavy weapons." Kane's jaw locked tight. Reaper 2, a 6-man SEAL recon element, had been hunting a high-value target in the mountains for 48 hours. They'd gone silent 12 hours ago when the storm slammed them, and now he knew why. "How many combat effective?" 4 left. Carter is critical. Santos caught shrapnel. We need air or we're gone." Pike shook her head before Kane could even ask. "All aircraft are grounded, sir. 0 visibility. Gusts at 50 knots. Pilots refuse to risk it." Kane stared at the digital map. Reaper 2 trapped 8 clicks northeast in a narrow ravine, a perfect kill zone. "Ground extraction?" "QRF gearing up. But with this terrain, 4 hours minimum," Pike answered. "And they'll be exposed to the entire route." The radio hissed again, panicked. "Viper 6, they're regrouping for a push. If they hit all sides, we're finished." Kane felt that familiar weight settle. 4 men clinging to life with nothing left to help them. "Deploy QRF anyway," he ordered. "Fast as they can move. We'll figure out how to keep Reaper 2 breathing." As Pike relayed orders, Sergeant Alvarez appeared in the doorway. He'd been listening. "Commander, we need to remove whoever's calling the shots out there. Break their coordination." "With what?" Kane snapped. "No air. No artillery. They own the high ground. We can't even see them." Alvarez hesitated then. "There is one option, sir. You're not going to like it." Kane turned fully toward him. Alvarez spoke softer. "We need a sniper. Someone who can make a long-range hit in this nightmare. Someone who can get eyes on that valley and reach those ridge positions." Kane shook his head. "Our best marksman taps out at 1,200 meters on a clear day." "I'm not talking about our usual shooters," Alvarez insisted. "I'm talking about Reeves." Kane's expression darkened. "The armorer?" "Sir, forget rumors. Look into her sealed file. You have the authority." "Even if I did, we don't have time to." "Then ask her." Alvarez stepped forward. "Look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's just freakishly good with guns. But if I'm right," Sergeant Alvarez insisted, "and she is who I think she is, those 4 men out there might actually survive." Commander Kane stared down at the digital map, the icon for Reaper 2 blinking like a heart struggling to beat in the dark. 4 lives hanging in the balance. Maybe even more if the QRF walked into a trap trying to reach them. "Go get her," Kane ordered. Alvarez didn't hesitate. He was gone in seconds. Kane turned to Lieutenant Pike. I need eyes on that valley, everything. Old drone footage, satellite sweeps. Whatever's still usable. Yes, sir. Last drone feed's 16 hours old, but I'll scrape together anything we have. 5 minutes later, Nora Reeves stepped into the operations center, fully geared up despite the time, and Kane realized she probably never truly slept. Her eyes scanned the room, the frantic radio calls, tense faces, and glowing maps. Commander? Kane pointed to the board. Team pinned down 8 clicks northeast. They're done for, unless someone shuts down the shooters on those ridges. No air support. QRF can't reach them in time. Nora studied the display without a flicker of emotion. Unfortunate, she said. Alvarez believes you can help, Kane pushed. Her eyes cut briefly to Alvarez, then back. I'm an armorer. Are you? Kane stepped closer. Because what I've seen from you looks like a whole lot more than cleaning rifles. And I don't care about sealed files or what you're trying to bury. I care about 4 men who'll be dead in less than an hour. The room fell still, every operator silently watching this 5'0" armorer face off with their commander. Even if I could do anything, Nora replied, voice steady as stone. No shooter can work in this. Wind, snow, pitch black. White Frost could, Alvarez said quietly. The name hit the room like a rifle crack. Nora stayed composed, but something broke faintly in her eyes, a hairline fracture in the armor. Just a ghost story, she said. Is it? Kane countered, stepping even closer. Because I burned through my override codes. Took 3 attempts, but I opened your real file. On the screen, a classified document, mostly blacked out except for a few brutal truths. Special reconnaissance. Extreme range elimination. Arctic operations certified. And at the bottom, in red, call sign, White Frost. Longest confirmed hit, 3,712 meters. Nora stared at the monitor. When she spoke, it was barely a voice. That person doesn't exist anymore. Those men out there are very real, Kane answered, and they need White Frost, whether she wants to exist or not. The radio erupted again, gunfire drowning half the message. Viper 6 advancing, inside 200 meters, might be our... Then silence. Nora shut her eyes, and the memories flooded in. Another valley, another ambush, another team torn apart because she was too late. She had promised herself never again. But 4 men were out there bleeding into the snow, thinking of home, of families they'd never return to. She opened her eyes, no hesitation left. I need a CheyTac M200 Cold Zero ammo, a ride to Ridge Point, Western Overlook. I want a spotter, full weather readouts, and someone feeding corrections to Reaper 2. SATCOM relay available? Kane felt a knot in his chest finally ease. Yes. Ridge Point is 3 clicks out. Can you make that shot from there? Commander Kane asked. Nora Reeves studied the map, already running the numbers in her head. Angles, wind shear, elevation, everything the weather would throw at a bullet. 4,100 meters with the height difference, she said evenly. Minus 22 degrees. Wind from the northwest, steady around 42 knots. Coriolis effect at this latitude pushes about 9 inches right at range. She looked up, eyes hard. Yes, sir. I can make it. But we have to move now. Kane didn't waste a second. He keyed his radio. All units, this is Viper 6. Fast team to Ridge Point immediately. Full winter gear, climbing kit. And get me the best spotter on base. Sergeant Alvarez stepped forward instantly. That's me, sir. Kane stared at him. You sure? I didn't bring her into this to let her walk up alone, Alvarez replied. But Nora was already heading for the door. 5 minutes, she called back. If you're coming, be ready in 5. After that, you're too late. She vanished into the storm, swallowed by the dark. Kane looked at Alvarez. If you're wrong about her, I'm not wrong, Alvarez said sharply. Trust me. The radio hissed again, frantic. Viper 6, Reaper 2, enemy inside 100 meters. This may be it. Kane leaned over the mic. Reaper 2, hold on. Help is coming. Not the usual help, but it's coming. Give us 20 minutes. A strained silence then. Copy. 20 minutes. We'll try. Kane's eyes flicked to the wall clock. The seconds felt like they were draining 4 lives, one tick at a time. Outside, the storm tore at the world, like it didn't care who lived or died. But somewhere in that blizzard, something dangerous had woken up, and Winter was about to find out that some snipers didn't wait for perfect conditions. They were the perfect conditions. While Nora geared up, Kane sat alone in his office, staring again at the classified personnel file that had taken him 3 security overrides to unlock. It was unlike anything he'd seen in 2 decades of service. The title read, Classified, Eyes Only, Operation White Frost. Beneath it, a record that sent a cold chill deeper than the storm outside. Name, Nora Reeves, formerly Staff Sergeant. Unit, JSOC, Task Force Mercury. Specialization, Long-Range Elimination, Extreme Environment Ops, years active, 8, before voluntary withdrawal. Below that, mission logs, nearly all blacked out, but a few brutal facts slipped through. 12 confirmed mountain operations, 43 confirmed kills, 7 high-value targets. Average hit at 1,147 meters, longest 3,912. Then came a heading that made Kane's throat tighten. Operation Frozen Dagger, January 2022. The psychological assessment hit even harder. Subject demonstrates exceptional emotional control and stress response. However, carries intense survivor's guilt linked to Frozen Dagger. Despite record-breaking kill on hostile command, Subject's team was lost to coordinated mortar fire during exfil. Subject Sakran sole survivor. The next line was even worse. Subject internalizes full responsibility for team deaths, believing she should have detected mortar positions prior to engagement. Repeated attempts to reinstate Subject to combat roles had failed. She refused them all. Subject has requested permanent reassignment to non-combat duties. Recommendation: approve. Forcing return to sniper operations may trigger severe psychological break. The last entry, dated 2 years prior, confirmed the move. Nora Reeves reassigned to logistics and armory work by her own request. Clearance kept intact, but combat status marked inactive voluntary. Note: Subject is to receive standard tasks only. Under no circumstances is she to be pressured into sniper duty without written authorization from top command. Commander Kane leaned back, the weight of her history pressing hard on his chest. The woman he'd just sent up a mountain wasn't just a talented shot. She might be the greatest cold-weather sniper the military ever produced, and she carried wounds no medic could dress. The office door opened, and Lieutenant Pike entered with a tablet clutched tight. "Sir, I pulled the after-action reports from Frozen Dagger. You should look." She handed it over. 4 years old, mostly blacked out, but the summary was clear enough. Task Force Mercury tasked with eliminating a commander leading a major offensive. Primary sniper White Frost took the shot, a record 3,212 meters, in brutal weather, but the enemy had indirect fire ready. Mortars rained down the moment the team moved. 5 killed. 1 survivor, extracted after 72 hours alone, running from patrols. Photos attached. 5 coffins draped in flags. 5 families shattered. And somewhere out there, a woman who made the impossible shot and lost everything that mattered. God, Kane breathed. Sir, should we call her back? Pike asked carefully. If she's still carrying trauma from that mission. She volunteered, Kane said, though the words felt like lies in his mouth. Did Nora truly choose this? Or had he twisted her guilt into action? He remembered her face when he revealed the truth, the way her voice shifted from denial to mission mode. Had he given her a chance, or reopened the wound she had bled to close? The radio on his desk crackled. Viper 6, this is Alvarez. Approaching Ridge Point. Reeves is setting up. Alvarez sounded in awe. Commander, she's unlike anyone I've ever seen. The way she reads the ground, the math she's running in her head. It's like watching a machine built for this. Is she stable? Kane asked quietly. A pause. Sir, whatever that file said, right now she's the most focused person on this mountain. She's not just good at this. This is who she is. Maybe the only version of herself she knows how to be. Kane swallowed and made a call. When this is done, stay with her. Don't let her vanish into that armory again. She's going to crash once the adrenaline burns off. Understood, sir. Kane glanced at the clock. 18 minutes since Reaper 2's last transmission. By now, the enemy would be on top of them, hand to hand, fighting for every breath. He zoomed the map in tight. 3,000 meters away, a lone figure lay flat in the snow, preparing to do something no one else on Earth could even attempt. If Nora Reeves pulled this off, she'd save 4 men while walking straight back into the nightmare that once destroyed her. Commander Kane had ordered people into hell before. That was part of command. But this time felt different. This time, he'd asked someone to tear open their deepest wounds, just so others wouldn't bleed out. Pike, he said quietly, when this is over, I want a full trauma team here within 48 hours. Real specialists. If Reeves keeps serving, she needs actual help, not more places to hide. Yes, sir. Kane stared down at the final line in her file again. Recommendation. Honor her service. Let her go. And he hadn't. He'd dragged her back into the cold because he needed a miracle, and she was the only one who could deliver one. I'm sorry, he murmured to no one, but thank you. The storm raged on outside, relentless, uncaring, while on a frozen ridge 3,000 meters away, a ghost was preparing to breathe again. Ridge Point jutted from the mountains like a broken fang, the climb up taking 11 brutal minutes through knee-deep snow and slick rock, the wind trying to rip them from the slope. Nora hit the top first, moving with a professional efficiency that left the 3-man security detail heaving for breath behind her. Sergeant Alvarez arrived seconds later, red-faced despite the insulated gear. The spot was dangerously exposed, a narrow ledge with a sheer drop on one side and a vertical wall on the other. But the view was exactly what they needed. Through swirling breaks in the snow, the valley below appeared as a dark scar where Reaper 2 clung to life. Nora dropped her pack and got to work. The CheyTac M200 came out first, its metal already frosting over in the bitter cold. She unfolded the bipod, checked the scope alignment, and fed in the 408 CheyTac rounds built for shots people called impossible. Alvarez knelt beside her, setting up his spotting scope and weather meter. Wind 48 knots, gusts to 55, he reported. Minus 24 and falling? Visibility maybe 3 clicks. Nora didn't answer. She peeled off her gloves, flexing bare fingers into the frozen air. Alvarez stared, knowing skin would freeze fast in these temps. But she needed perfect trigger feel. She lay prone behind the rifle, her whole body locking into stillness. Through the optic, the valley unfolded in a U-shaped trap. Reaper 2 pinned at the closed end behind a cluster of boulders, muzzle flashes lighting up the ridges above them. "Range to primary?" she asked, her voice shifting. Flat, controlled, something mechanical taking over. Alvarez checked. "East Ridge, about 4,100 meters. That wind will shove you far right." "I know," she replied, breath slowing into a calculated rhythm. 4 seconds in, 8 out. Her heart rate dropping, body becoming part of the rifle. She keyed the mic. "Viper 6, this is White Frost. In position. Awaiting target priority." Kane's reply came instantly, voice tight. "White Frost. Enemy commander is on the East Ridge, center of their line. He's controlling the assault. Drop him first." "Copy. Acquiring target now." Through the scope, Nora Reeves scanned the eastern ridge, snow smearing shapes into ghosts. But she'd worked in worse. She searched for the subtle tells of leadership, the slightly fortified firing spot, the man who stood a little taller because he believed distance made him invincible. There, a figure moving just behind the line, gesturing orders, no rifle in sight. "Target acquired," she murmured into comms. "Stand by for wind." Sergeant Alvarez checked his instruments. "Winds all over, 46 knots northwest, gusting. You might get a 10-second window at 40. Nora didn't need the screen. She felt the breeze tug at her hair, sensed the pressure shifts like she was reading a page in a familiar book. 52, dropping, 48, 45. Her finger settled on the trigger, taking up slack. 3 meters right, 1.2 high. A perfect equation for a bullet that would fly 7.4 seconds through chaos. Move, wind, terrain, 1,000 ways a miracle could die. 42 knots, Alvarez whispered. Steady. Nora's breathing vanished. Heart slowed into silence. The universe shrank to a dot in the crosshairs. And then, the rifle thundered. The muzzle blast kicked snow into a white explosion as the .408 round tore into the storm at nearly 3,000 feet per second, a spinning spear fighting gravity and wind for one long heartbeat of flight. Down below, Lieutenant Mason, pinned with Reaper 2, saw the impossible. The enemy commander jerked backward like struck by lightning, then collapsed and didn't move again. Confusion rippled through their ranks. "Target down," Alvarez confirmed. "They have no idea where death came from." But Nora was already cycling the bolt. Secondary, Western Ridge, crew-served weapon, 4,200 meters. The next shot took 6 seconds. The machine gunner folded. A third round silenced the fighter scrambling to take charge. With every impact, the enemy assault unraveled, panic replacing coordination as some dove for cover and others fled blindly. "Reaper 2, you're clear to move," Commander Kane radioed. "They're suppressed. Go now while they're confused." Mason's voice came back breathless with relief. "Who the hell is hitting them?" "Old friend," Kane answered. "Move now. Questions later." Nora fired twice more to carve a safe path, then lowered the rifle. Alvarez glanced over. "You good?" "Ammo discipline," she said calmly. "They're breaking. Reaper 2 can finish it." And he saw she was right. Through the scope, the 4 SEALs, 2 limping and bloodied, began withdrawing with a chance at living, because a ghost on a ridge had decided not to miss. The remaining fighters, shaken by watching their leaders drop from nowhere, broke and scattered instead of chasing. They're clear, Sergeant Alvarez confirmed. QRF's almost there. 15 minutes and they're out. Nora Reeves gave a single nod, then saved the rifle and started tearing down the position. Her hands moved with practiced precision. But Alvarez noticed the small tremors, cold mixing with the sudden crash of adrenaline. "Gloves, before you freeze them off," he warned. She clumsily pulled them on, only now feeling the brutal sting of -24 gnawing her exposed skin. 5 shots, Alvarez said quietly. 4,000 meters, in a blizzard, all hits. I've never seen that done. It's what I do, she answered, voice flat, empty. Did, she corrected herself after a beat. What you are, Alvarez countered softly. That doesn't disappear because you wished it away. Nora looked toward the valley, where 4 men were alive for one reason. She pulled a trigger. She should feel triumph, relief, something. Instead, she felt hollow. Those 5 shots had cracked open a door she'd kept locked for 2 years. We should move, she muttered, before we freeze here. The descent was worse than the climb, her legs shaking, exhaustion clawing at every step. Halfway down, she stumbled, and Alvarez caught her arm. Easy, he said. You just did the impossible. Your body gets to complain. I'm fine. You're not, he replied calmly. But that's allowed. When they reached the base, soldiers were waiting despite the hour. Word had spread fast. Reaper 2 was alive, saved by a sniper who shouldn't exist. Nora pushed through the staring crowd like she was made of smoke, heading straight for the armory. But Commander Kane stepped in front of her. She stopped, shoulders drooping just slightly. You saved 4 lives, he said gently. I did my job, she whispered. You did far more than that. Kane hesitated, then. I read your real file. I know about Frozen Dagger. I know what it cost you. Nora's jaw tightened like she was bracing against a hit. Then you understand why I don't do this anymore. I understand why you thought you couldn't, Kane replied. But tonight proved you still can. Better than anyone. Her voice cracked. Those men died because I was the best. I took the shot. I did everything right. And while I focused on the perfect kill, I missed the mortars. 5 people died because I was perfect at the wrong thing. That wasn't your fault. It was my responsibility, she insisted, eyes shining with pain he'd never seen before. My team, my mission. She swallowed hard. So yes, I can make impossible shots in impossible conditions. But every time I do, I see them. And I don't know if saving 4 tonight erases the 5 who never came home. Kane said nothing. There was nothing to say. Some wounds don't close. Some guilt never fades. You just learn to walk with the weight. Get some rest, Commander Kane told her softly. For real this time. We'll talk tomorrow. Nora Reeves nodded once, then slipped away into the shadows between the buildings. Sergeant Alvarez appeared beside Kane. She's not okay, sir. I know, Kane said quietly. But she's alive, and so are 4 men because of her. Alvarez frowned. Is that enough? Kane stared into the dark where Nora vanished. I don't know. I honestly don't. The storm kept pounding through the night. In the armory, Nora sat alone with the CheyTac M200 spread out in pieces before her. Snow drifted past the window like endless falling ash. She had sworn never to fire a shot like that again, and tonight she shattered that promise. Now the real question clawed at her. Not could she do it again, but should she? The mountains had no answers. They never did. They only waited for spring. At dawn, a dull gray sunrise revealed a crystal world. the storm finally spent. The base shimmered under a cold sun, deadly and beautiful all at once. In the medical tent, the 4 men from Reaper 2 were being treated. Frostbite, shrapnel, shock, but alive. And that mattered more than anything. Kane found Nora right where Alvarez predicted, still in the armory, still cleaning the CheyTac with that same careful reverence, except now every motion looked heavy, like the rifle had doubled in weight overnight. "Nora," Kane said, using her name for the first time. "Reaper 2's going to be okay. Lilta Mason asked to see you, to thank you." "Not necessary," she muttered. "Maybe not. But he wants to. They all do. You saved them." Nora set the cleaning rod down, hands resting flat on the bench. "I've been thinking about what you said, about proving I can still do this." "You did," Kane told her. "Better than anyone." "But can isn't the same as should, Commander," she said. "I'm good at killing people from very far away. That's it. But talent isn't a purpose, and I'm not sure I can keep being White Frost without losing whatever is left of me." Kane pulled up a stool and sat beside her. He looked awkward, too big for the tiny seat. "Let me tell you something about command," he said. She nodded. "Every time I send someone into danger, a piece of me goes with them. And when they don't come back, that piece stays lost. After 15 years, I sometimes wonder what's left of me." He paused. "But that isn't weakness. That's the cost of caring. And the day I stop caring, that's the day I should hand over command. Because I'd become the kind of leader who gets people killed for nothing." Nora frowned. "What does that have to do with me?" "You're carrying 5 people, Nora. 5 pieces of you. You think you lost them, but they're still here, shaping you." Kane met her eyes. "The question isn't whether you can put that weight down. You can't. The question is whether you let it bury you, or push you to make sure what happened to them never happens again." Nora sat silently for a long time. Outside, the base woke to a new day. Voices, engines, routine. Life moving forward, even while she stood frozen in place. "I'm scared," she finally whispered. "Scared that if I let White Frost back out, that's all I'll ever be. Just the shot, just the kill. Nothing human left." Kane shook his head. "Then don't be White Frost. Be Nora Reeves, who just happens to be the best cold-weather sniper alive. Be the woman who reads wind like poetry and treats every weapon like a life depends on it. Be someone who saves people, because she knows exactly how precious life is." The armory door opened. Alvarez entered, and behind him stood Lilta Mason, bandaged, leaning on a crutch. Grateful eyes locked on the quiet shooter who saved his life. Mason stood there wrapped in bandages, limping but clear-eyed and deeply grateful. "Sergeant Reeves," he said, "I just wanted to thank you. We were out of options. You gave us a chance." Nora Reeves shifted, uneasy under the attention. "You held your ground. That gave me time to take the shot. We held because you took out their command. 4,000 meters in a storm. That shouldn't have been possible." "It wasn't impossible," Nora corrected gently. "It was necessary." Mason gave a painful half-smile. "Fair enough, but thank you. My team is alive because of you." When he was gone, Nora turned back to Commander Kane. "If I do this, if I step back into that role, I have conditions." "Name them." "I'm not going back to being a ghost. No sealed files. No hiding who I am. If they know I'm a sniper, they should know why I stopped, and why I'm starting again. Done. And I need help. Real help. Therapy, counseling, Whatever keeps me from losing myself to this again. Already arranged. Specialists arrive tomorrow. And no more solo ops. I work with a spotter, a team. I refuse to watch another one die. Sergeant Alvarez lifted a hand. Already volunteered. Someone's got to remind you to put gloves on. For the first time in 2 years, Nora smiled. Small, hesitant, but real. Okay, she said. I'll do it. But one more thing. I stay the armorer. Every weapon here goes through me. If I expect people to trust their gear, I need to know it's perfect. Deal, Kane said, shaking her hand. Welcome back, White Frost. Within days, the base shifted around the new truth. The quiet armorer was actually a legend. Some stared with awe, some with nerves. Most simply treated her the same, because that's who she insisted on being. She built a training program for long-range shooters. How to read weather like language, think under pressure, maintain their weapons like lifelines. Alvarez became her partner in it, the two of them forging a working bond neither saw coming. The nightmares didn't vanish. She still woke some nights gasping, team members' faces vivid in the dark. But now she talked to the therapist instead of burying it. And slowly, she understood what Kane told her. Those 5 weren't weights dragging her down. They were reasons to stand back up. 6 weeks after the night on Ridge Point, a new call came in. Another team pinned. Another impossible shot. Nora and Alvarez geared up without hesitation. You ready? Alvarez asked as they prepped to move out. Nora Reeves checked her rifle, hands steady and sure. I'm ready. And she was. They headed into the mountains again, into cold, wind, and danger. But this time she wasn't running from who she was. She wasn't hiding behind a quiet job or a forgotten name. She was Nora. She was White Frost. She was a sniper, an armorer, a teacher, a survivor, a woman who carried the dead with honor and the living with purpose. Out in the endless white, that was enough. The mountains watched in silence, as they always did, and the legend walked among them, no longer a ghost, but someone who had learned the hardest shot wasn't taken at 4,000 meters. It was taken at yourself, when you choose to live again. 3 months later, Nora stood in the armory teaching a young sniper, Kayla Brooks, how to care for her weapon properly. Spring thaw had begun, strips of brown earth cutting into the retreating snow. Your rifle is a partner, Nora said, guiding Kayla's grip on the bolt. Take care of it, and it takes care of you. Don't forget that. Yes, Sergeant. Outside the window, the mountains were starting to show green at their base, life pushing back after the long winter. Her radio crackled. Reeves, this is Alvarez. Got coffee. And those protein bars you like. Training room in 5? She smiled. Copy. On the way. Crossing the base, soldiers greeted her with simple nods. Not fear, not hero worship. Just respect for someone who stepped up when it counted. In the ops center, Commander Kane looked up from his reports as she passed. She nodded once. He returned the gesture. No words needed. Spring was here. The storms would come back, they always did. But for now there was warmth and sunlight and the reminder that even the longest winters end. Nora, once White Frost, once a ghost, now simply herself, walked forward into the light and let it touch her face. She was home. Not because the mountains owned her, but because she had chosen to live, to serve, to show up fully, even when it hurt. And that choice, she realized, was the shot worth taking every time.